Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the End Step. This is Matt Orfanello coming at you with my good friend Eric Dupuy. Eric.
Oh, thrilled to be here for this one. A lot of interesting decks. Very high level of competition as everybody ratchets up their playtesting for champs at the beginning of November. Could not be more excited for this.
So I'd like to give a shout out to Dave Tassinari and everybody over at Scholars Bookstore and Gaming for allowing us to have this great tournament. Everyone at the End Step for doing all this hard work, recording the video, taking the time out of their day to make this happen, and let's get into some coverage.
So we've got the affinity list from Adrian Becker. He really put this deck on the map in paper Magic. Now it's a deck that's been around on Magic Online. Nobody had really taken the leap into constructed Vintage with it, and the formats are a little different because online you don't have power. You got to make some adjustments, and he's done a really good job tinkering with it to make it work. The core idea here is you have Genesis Chamber to create 1/1s, and then you can clamp them away to draw more cards, just kind of run through your whole deck and go explosive. Hopefully we'll be able to see something like that. It's difficult to do in the shop mirror. A lot of the time these cheap creatures will still come out versus shops despite the spears, and it's actually a heavy favorite versus Josh's list.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's able to run 4 Skull Clamps, I mean, that Vintage is the only format where you can do that, really, and Genesis Chamber really gives him the competitive advantage to fully abuse the card advantage. It's a really interesting list. I like it because he's able to take advantage of other things that people aren't really taking advantage of in Vintage, like he's playing 2 Gaia's Cradles in his list. The fact that he has like a heavy density of creatures means that he's really going to ramp out. Going to be able to empty his hand early with that. And on the other side of the table, Josh Clayton's playing Terra Nova shops. Now, from what I understand, Terra Nova refers to the fact that he plays main deck removal. And he is playing 3 Ratchet Bombs main deck and a duplicate. Besides that, he's got pretty much a stock list with the 13 spheres. He has the 4 Mutavaults, which are good for the mirror.
And the 4 factories as well. It's very, very heavy on man lands, and that does, as you said, for the mirror, gets around all of the sphere effects. And Mishra's Factory is totally capable of trading with a Lodestone Golem even. So on Josh's side of the table, he's coming out with a Factory and a Revoker. He's aware of Adrian's success with his deck, so he's going to go ahead and name Genesis Chamber. Now, Genesis Chamber has a triggered ability, so I believe that's a huge error unless I'm mistaken on this. Let's see how this plays out. Thorn of Amethyst as well. That Lotus really allowing him to accelerate out some cards. Now, Thorn of Amethyst, that's interesting because I don't think that's going to affect very much in Adrian's list at all.
No.
I mean, it's so many creatures. We'll see how that plays out. That may not have been as strong a hand as Josh would be used to versus most decks. I mean, look at this. We've got Chalice at 0, Thorn, and Revoker. That would beat a lot of decks.
2 win conditions. I think the Revoker probably would have been stronger named on, like, I don't know, maybe a Arcbound Ravager or
Skullclamp. I would say
even.
Skullclamp.
Yeah.
I mean, that card is absolutely huge.
Yeah.
James actually just showed me the Oracle text there. Yeah, that Revoker is going to be a blank. That's a triggered ability off of Genesis Chamber, so he's not going to be activating it all.
That's rough. So Adrian's starting off -2 life, +2 mana. Let's see what he does.
Soul Ring, lots of mana.
Soul Ring. Back to 2 mana.
Yeah, these workshop mirrors tend to be very explosive. Mana is extremely important. That Soul Ring is unfortunate for Josh here. I think he was hoping to stop some of the fast mana,
right?
Cut off the Moxes completely, and that's really brutal to have 4 mana when you start that you're facing down when you're looking at a Thorn and a Chalice. That's just huge.
So he has the die signifying he still has a colorless floating. Deciding on what to do. Just pass.
That's interesting. Looking at his hand, it's going to be interesting to see what else he possibly could have had.
I think Josh just drew a Mox Ruby, which is unfortunate for him.
Someone's going to be drawing 0 casting cost artifacts with the Chalice. You just kind of have to hope it's the other guy.
He just cracked for 5, putting Adrian down to 13. using the sick factory to pump the non-sick factory. So now what's Adrian going to do?
His back is up against the wall. He's going to need some kind of body to stabilize or some kind of explosive engine with skull clamp. We will see what he's got. He's a careful player, but he plays at a good pace. Does like to try and keep the pressure on his opponents. And we've got that Frogmite.
So he should still have no, Frogmite costs 2. He controls 2 artifacts.
Costs 2 there.
Putting some meat on the table.
Now Frogmite can trade with the Revoker at any time, and against the factories, Josh will need to swing in with 1 at a time and then hold back the pumps. Oh,
strip mine.
Very, very good here. This is
especially considering that Josh is relying on manlands right now.
Yeah, and his mana base is very taxed. I mean, he's not going to be able to play any of his zero casting cost acceleration that he draws. And if he draws a workshop, it's not going to be able to animate those factories. So, very interesting. Adrian keeping the strip mine open, hoping that Josh animates and swings, and he'll get the tempo boost there, saving himself the 2 life, as compared to just trying to cut off the mana for Josh. The position Josh is in, he may not be playing many more spells for the rest of the game. It may just be manlands from here on out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that Mutavault ties right in with what you just said. So, okay, he's animating both of the factories and attacking with the team.
That's interesting. I disagree with this play.
So right now, Adrian can trade with both of his lands.
Yeah, I really disagree.
Josh is just down to 2 mana or 1 manland attack per turn. Adrian can take that 2 damage, no problem.
Now, something that people may not realize, Mutavault is an assembly worker, so other factories can pump it. So he could have been coming across for 4 damage with just the Mutavault there.
Right. So now he's got a Skull Clamp, taking the 2 life.
He's going to be looking to draw some cards off of the Signal Pest and really get the ball rolling.
That's just ridiculous. Because his whole deck is designed to dump his hand every turn, and he's drawing 2 extra cards or more per turn. If he can make it through the next couple of turns, I don't see how he loses with that amount of card advantage. Ooh, we got a Wasteland. And he's coming across for 4, so
that's some serious damage.
He still does
need some blockers.
He still has a 2-turn clock if he doesn't use his Ancient Tomb.
I think what he'd really like to see here is something like a Frogmite that he could equip with the Skull Clamp, trade in combat, and get the cards out of it. But this is a difficult spot. It was looking very good for Adrian there. But those manlands just keep piling on Josh's side of the table. They are very good in the workshop mirrors and all their variants. If that Revoker was on Skull Clamp, this would be a very, very different game.
Right. I mean, Adrian might have taken a different line, but it seems like Skull Clamp's easily his best line.
I mean, he hasn't had any other plays really aside from clamping.
Yeah, I think I saw a Genesis Chamber in his hand, but maybe he didn't want to play it because he knows, maybe he kind of understands that this game's not looking so great. He understands his opponent made a mistake by naming Genesis Chamber with the Revoker, and hopefully he can take advantage of that and maybe have his opponent name it again next game. But if he plays the card, his opponent's going to want to read it and then see that there's no colon anywhere and it's not an activated ability. Unless he can just find a way to just win outright.
Well, another factor with the Genesis Chamber is it is symmetrical, so Josh's deck is also capable of taking advantage of it. Playing a card like Revoker will give him a 1/1 as well, so you don't want to run it out there unless you have some kind of way of taking advantage, which he may not have in his hand right now.
So Tanglewire, he'll probably tap his... I mean, definitely the Chalice and the Thorn.
Absolutely.
Oh, Andy's wasting. He's giving himself. So he's only going to have one untapped permanent. So I got to imagine he's coming across with the Revoker.
Yeah, that's clearly the play here. He's not going to be able to really cast any useful spells, getting Adrian down, and then hopefully not being able to use that Ancient Tomb anymore is a big win.
Mm-hmm. So Adrian has plenty of things that he can tap.
Yeah, Tanglewire is one of the least fair cards for the way that it looks compared to what it actually does.
Mm-hmm.
It seems so symmetrical, really doesn't end up that way at all. Your opponent's tapping down 4 permanents, and then on your turn, you're effectively only tapping 2 permanents because you fade down, tap the Tanglewire, and then 2 other permanents. So it's very, very unfair in its effect. Now,
Ravager with a mana floating.
very good. Very, very good here. So he's going to be able to at least sack the Mana Vault to make him a 2/2. And he's got 2 more targets. I mean, he's going to be able to hold off Josh's attack next turn at the very least. Let's see what he does here.
After Josh taps all his permanents, too, he could even sacrifice the Tanglewire.
Absolutely. It's just a question of where is he going to go from here? Is he going to be able to get a lot more guys out, or is he going to need to... There we go. So we've got the Skull Clamp on there. When he blocks during combat now, he'll get 2 more cards out of it. Ravager is very good with Skull Clamp because you can throw it on things like Frogmite and then sack, get the counter, get the 2 cards.
And if Josh doesn't attack this turn, then he could just sack the Tanglewire and have an even bigger Ravager.
Yeah, Tanglewire is pretty helpful right now. He does need some time. He's only going to be tapping his Tanglewire and most likely the... well, I guess you'd do the Skull Clamp just in case you need the mana from the Ancient Tomb. He's probably not going to be tapping it.
And then next turn, so he could sack the Tanglewire to the Ravager, right? Play another creature, and then sack the Ravager, move the modular tokens, and draw the 2 cards.
Absolutely.
You have the option of drawing the cards at any time.
Yeah.
With Ravager on a Skull Clamp. I don't know what they were thinking when they printed that set.
I mean, it was actually in Standard at the same time. It was crazy. That was one of the last times I played Standard. Like, when there's a clearly best deck, I'll go ahead and splash around. That and Jace, actually, when he was around. I showed up for some Standard tournaments there.
Mm. So he opted to sack his Skull Clamp and just win that block. And keep board presence.
I think he feels like he kind of got Josh there. I don't think Josh saw that line, kind of took him by surprise. I think that's kind of very tempting when you feel like you can really get someone with a play that they didn't see and just straight up value. Now,
the only thing... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
If he has another Skull Clamp coming up, it'll make a lot more sense. We'll see what else he has here.
One of the things I don't agree with about not sacking the Tanglewire, though, is Josh has 2 permanents that just don't do anything. So keeping Tanglewire around this turn doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Now, it didn't affect his ability to play out his hand because he wasn't going to use the Ancient Tomb anyways. But I mean, Josh isn't tapping anything that matters.
No, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. So it may have been better to have the Skull. I mean, I agree. I think that is absolutely correct. I think it just looked like a play that Josh didn't see. And that's probably why he went with it, just that gotcha kind of feeling.
Mm.
But you are correct. If he gets rid of the Tanglewire here, there's really no problem. Looking over his list, I don't see anything that is like a Metamorph. That could have been a good reason. No, I don't see one of those. If he had Metamorph or Sculpting Steel, I could see wanting to keep the Tanglewire around. But
totally fair.
I can't see from here a good reason to keep it around if your opponent does have those 2 permanents to tap. I suppose if he's really worried about Karn, Silver Golem, that could be a possibility because Karn coming down, but Karn animating Chalice of the Void isn't going to be able to attack anyways, so very short list of reasons why that would be a good line.
Revoker
this time.
Yeah.
He's going to go ahead and go with Ravager here. And in response, before he names it, he's going to go ahead and sack the Tanglewire. That's as it comes into the play, not a triggered ability, so you can't stifle it, and you also can't respond to it. Once they play it, the window's once they name the card, the window is passed.
Yep.
Now, of course, that doesn't mean you can just jam the card and yell a name at your opponent.
Right.
They do have to be able to respond.
It's on the stack.
Absolutely.
And it does have Summoning Sickness.
All right. So this is turned into quite the grind. That Cradle is not amazing right now. Has a real chance of becoming very good as this game goes on.
Well, I mean, it's not amazing in the fact that it only makes 1 mana, but it is amazing in the fact that it's foil.
Oh, another Ravager. He's just a 1/1.
Yep.
And we've got 2 more. He's thinking about most likely a play that would force him to tap the Ancient Tomb if he's really hesitating here.
I see a Mox Jet.
Ravager is such a strong card. It is nice when you're playing a workshop build to be able to sacrifice the cards that just aren't pulling their weight. Something like Chalice of the Void later in the game,
Right.
After your opponent doesn't have any more Moxes left in their hand. Those can be really, really solid.
And the synergy with Skull Clamp, too. Just the fact that you can sacrifice it out of nowhere if there's no other way of making the creature die. I really like Adrian's deck here.
Yeah, it's a heavy favorite versus the workshop decks. It's a really good choice if you're expecting a lot of sphere resistances on the other side of the table. Cradle can allow you to power through so much. And we're clamping.
Just going to draw some cards.
It may be the best unrestricted draw engine in Vintage right now. I think we're going to see some more Pyromancer lists running it as people start to really figure it out. I mean, you're still paying 1, even with all the spheres out, you're still only paying 1 mana to draw 2. At some point, Ancestral Recall, 3, 4, 5 mana really stops becoming that attractive. This is just always good no matter what your opponent has on the other side of the table.
Now he's got a Frogmite. And he can actually come across this turn because he knows that Josh isn't going to have anything hasty. Unless he drops a Slash Panther. But we know that he doesn't have Slash Panther.
Yeah, that card fell out of favor pretty fast.
Mm-hmm. I've also seen a few lists running Porcelain Legionnaire.
Yeah, that card is interesting. I've seen more of the white trash lists that run it. Those, decks running Thalia and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much the workshop builds. It's certainly capable of holding off Lodestone Golem, and First Strike is important. But one backside is not as relevant as it used to be. I mean, Lava Dart used to be a card in Vintage that you actually had to worry about. As it is now, Dark Blast is the closest thing to a real problem there. I mean, Lightning Bolt kills 3 toughness and down all day long, and that's very common. Swords to Plowshares doesn't care about your toughness. Abrupt Decay is only looking at the casting cost, so Legionnaire is a pretty interesting card.
Yep.
And there's not too much that you're going to swing into with First Strike in Vintage that's going to survive. I mean, Blightsteel Colossus, but that's really not going to matter anyways.
So Josh just dropped a Mutavault and passed. He didn't really have a good attack there because he doesn't want to trade Frogmite for Phyrexian Revoker, and I can't really say I blame him. So now Adrian's in an interesting position. Probably trying to figure out the best way to maximize his mana. He's thinking about attacking with that Ravager, so he must have a creature to play this turn.
Yeah, this Genesis Chamber is definitely just stranded in his hand. I'm very curious as to... I think he just is caught off guard here by the Revoker. Is that possible? No, the first Revoker's already gone, right?
It's already dead.
I have no idea why that Genesis Chamber is in his hand. That is very interesting.
6 power. Getting in there for 6. I mean, he can block one of the creatures no matter what, and both of them attacking is not lethal. Even if he drops Mishra's Factory, he can just make sure he blocks the Mutavault. So he knows he's not dead on board. And now Josh is at 7, so his Ancient Tomb is actually looking a little less attractive at this point. and it might cause him to start playing a little more defensively. Maybe he won't even make an attack this turn. If he does, it could potentially be lethal.
I don't think trading your Revoker and I mean, if he swings, he's got to put out some other guys. Adrian has the crackback for the win.
Mm-hmm.
If he taps the Ancient Tomb, yeah, this is really, really tough. And he can't swing with the Revoker because if it dies, then the Ravager can just eat a bunch of artifacts and be lethal. So yeah, this is very, very difficult spot for Josh. He needs to keep the Revoker in play. He doesn't have a lot of options. Crucible would be helpful, but
he's coming across.
Yeah, I just don't see it. He's just giving his opponent 2 cards there.
Yeah, like it seems like a trade, but really it's a 2-for-1.
Yeah.
So now Adrian's got that. Look at that hand. He can barely hold all those cards.
Yeah, this deck is capable of doing some really busted stuff, and that Gaia's Cradle is just going to go right along with the acceleration. As he plays cheaper cards, he's just going to be able to power out that Cradle. I'm guessing he has some Memnites and some 0 casting cost stuff in his hand that Chalice is holding back.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually at this point, Cradle would be capping for 6 or 7 mana. He's pretty well clear to swing.
Yeah, he could. I mean, he has to force the block.
Might as
He's
well.
not afraid of a crackback, and
I think he wants to put the Skull Clamp on there, just to make sure that if Josh doesn't block, it does the extra point of damage. The difference between Josh being at 1 and 2 isn't that substantial. We'll see if he's able to put out anything else with this mana pre-combat. Oh, he's using the Cradle, so there is no extra floating mana. Looks like we're going to be coming across for 6, and Josh is going to go to 1. Ancient Tomb offline. 2 mana and a Revoker. Oh, look at this.
And that Revoker is going to name
Soul Ring.
Soul Ring, yeah.
Wow. Both of those Soul Rings, black bordered, completely useless.
Yeah.
Josh is in very bad shape here. 4 mana. Tangle Wire, 1, 2, 3, 4, not going to matter. He's got the Skull Clamp, the Soul Ring, the Ancient Tomb, and the Cradle to tap down.
Yep.
He's going to be able to swing across for the win. Unless he's got some other creature to put into play, which does not look possible with that mana base.
Wow. Adrian grinding it out.
Yeah.
Yep. Made the right taps, so he's just clear to swing in for the kill.
Alright, well, that was an exciting game 1. Really got to see a lot of cards out of Adrian's affinity list. It is very unusual, even though he's done extremely well with it, and it's a very good choice. Not a lot of people have been playing the deck. It's probably not in a lot of people's testing gauntlets. It probably should be.
Mm-hmm.
I really think Skull Clamp is hugely underrated right now. There are not a lot of great ways to draw cards compared to the historical context of Vintage, and Skull Clamp is better now than it has ever been.
Well, when you say Skull Clamp in Vintage, just me as a Legacy player who doesn't really play Vintage that often, I would think, oh, you must be playing Elves. And Elves is actually an interesting list too, but it doesn't really have it can't take advantage of all the same acceleration that Affinity can.
Yeah, Elves is actually a reasonable budget choice. I think there's several tribal choices you can play on a budget, and Elves is one of them. It does benefit from power, particularly Time Walk. However, the deck is so explosive that you can use cheaper versions. Something like a Time Warp is nowhere near as good as Time Walk, but it does give you the ability, once you combo out, to take another turn. Because you're going to have just an insane amount of mana. Not infinite, but pretty close. The Vintage builds don't usually have a way of going truly infinite with Mirror Entity or anything like that. But you're able to Grape Shot, you're able to do a lot of things. Now, one of the problems I have with Elves in Vintage is it is terrible versus shops. I mean, if they go turn 1 Lodestone Golem, and you just don't have the acceleration. Like, you're not playing Black Lotus, Moxes, all of that.
Right.
So you're just playing a land and saying go. Maybe you're using an Elvish Spirit Guide to power out a Llanowar Elf, but it's really not going to get there. So aside from the workshop deck, Elves would be much, much better. But Shops, as you can see, is a major player in the Vintage format right now. There are a lot of different builds, and you really do need to be prepared for it. Now, in terms of these guys being prepared, let's take a look at their sideboard. Phyrexian Metamorph and Dismember are interesting parts of Adrian's sideboard for this match. He's got Thorn of Amethyst and some graveyard hate, some stuff versus the blue decks. None of that's really going to matter. The cards that aren't going to matter as much in this matchup, a lot of the time the sphere effects don't help.
What about Tangle Wire? Do you think that's a good card in this matchup?
I like Tangle Wire. Yeah. I think you can shut down your opponent's mana. It's not as good versus the workshop decks as it is versus the blue decks. I mean, not by a mile. Depending on what he's got kicking around in his list, that may be the card that gets cut. Because let's see here. Yeah, his build right now is not running main deck sphere effects aside from the Lodestone, right?
Right. So maybe it is the Tangle Wire, and he just goes full aggro.
Yeah, it looks that way. It really does.
And he has a memory jar. That's pretty cool.
Oh, Jar is so sick. So that's why the deck is so popular on Magic Online, because Jar is a 4 of. So you just go insane. You like Jar, draw 7 cards, play them all, tap your Cradle, play another Jar, Jar away. Wow. I mean, you just go absolutely ballistic the whole time. You're skull clamping. I mean, it's actually, from my understanding, somewhat difficult to play online just from all the clicking, because there's just so many insane plays going on.
Wow. So on Josh's side of the table, he's got, what does he have? Tabernacle,
Metamorph, Maze of Ith, Duplicant. He's got lots of tools. You got to notice the workshop decks, even though they can do really well versus Dredge, they always have to bring a lot more in. So they're always going to need like the Grafdigger's Cages, the Relic of Progenitus, whatever the best graveyard hate is at the time. It's always going to be a big part of their sideboard. Most workshop decks really want to win the mirror, and I think that's what both of these decks are trying to do. Josh through the use of Mutavault and Mishra's Factory to get around the sphere effects, and Adrian through just going ballistic with a swarm of creatures that his opponent can't really stop. We'll see which one's more successful. In the past, the Affinity Robots has been the way to go, but for a long time, people really thought the Mutavault Mishra's Factory was just the highest level of one-upsmanship, and Adrian seems to be proving that assumption incorrect. Now, Tabernacle is going to be really good versus Adrian, unless he gets a Gaia's Cradle.
Right.
So we'll see. It's probably going to come in. I mean, Josh has a lot more dead cards in the main deck by a mile. Metamorph tends to be a good card in the workshop mirrors, because whatever they're doing better than you can catch up.
You just get on their level.
Yeah. If they have a Crucible waste going on, you can get a Crucible and really level things out.
So Josh will be on the play, playing out some 0 mana artifacts, getting some acceleration. Wow. So he's starting off with 3 mana, and he clearly has lands in his hand. That's an Ancient Tomb, and I also saw a Mutavault. So he's going to be ramping pretty well this game. So he plays the Mutavault this turn, gets a Sphere going, pass.
Yeah, that's totally reasonable. Sphere's really, really solid compared to Thorn of Amethyst. It does make all the spells cost 1 more, whereas Thorn really never makes that happen. So we've got Mox Pearl. He may be able to just chain, into a Memnite. A lot of the time, that Sphere of Resistance will result in somebody chaining Mox into Mox into Mox and having a more explosive turn 2.
Yeah.
So Adrian may be light on mana. We'll see how this plays out.
Josh drew the Chalice, so Chalice at 0 is not as strong now. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it served him well last game. It was able to keep Memnites off the board, as well as the extra Moxes. All of those extra Moxes are really good with Ravager, even when you're drawing a blank late game. It's able to pump your guys.
Coming across for early damage. And now he's got 4 mana at his disposal. You could play a Chalice at 1. He could play the Tangle Wire in his hand, which he'll do.
Yeah, I think that's fine here. This is the way Josh's deck wants to play. It's going to make it very difficult for Adrian to do anything. He would have liked to have gotten that Chalice at 0 out before those permanents came down.
Mm-hmm.
If that were the case, this game would be very close to over.
Yeah.
He would have been able to actually wait a turn or two before dropping the Tangle Wire and really just make sure that Adrian just never gets anything out.
So Adrian has some decisions to make.
Yeah, he's tapped down. He's going to be able to play a land and maybe power out another guy. If he can outpace that Tangle Wire, that will be able to alleviate a little bit of pressure off of his mana base.
Yeah.
But you don't really want to just put out a land and have it get blown up. It's a tough spot. Strip Mine being tapped is unfortunate.
So he's got the Cradle, and that is a high value land right there. I can see why he would be careful to play it, but he may have determined that he has no other choices.
So we've got a Academy into, look like he was thinking Revoker.
Can't afford Revoker because it costs 3.
This could be a blunder if he just runs out that Academy and he gets, oh yeah, he did not account for the Sphere. Trying to judge all the different things going on, it escaped him there, and that could be very costly. That Academy is the type of card that could let you just power right out of this situation.
Well, he played a Mutavault, so it's not getting wasted this turn.
Well, that's fortunate.
I mean, Josh still has a pretty significant board presence, but Adrian has outs now. I mean, he's still going to tap the same 3 things on his turn, but
yeah, but he's going to go into his main phase with an additional 2 mana, so this worked out very well for him. We've got the Revoker, and looks like he learned his lesson, and he's going to go with Skull Clamp.
Yep, smart choice.
Mutavault coming through.
Yep, another 2 damage. Just chipping away.
Yeah, there's no way he's going to be using his Strip Mine here this early.
No.
The Mana Denial, the mana is completely out of hand at this point, so Mana Denial is not going to be that relevant. So let's see what he can do here. We've got Signal Pest.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, Signal Pest adds a mana next turn.
And it's another permanent.
Mm-hmm.
So really what he is likely to be able to do is tap down his guys, have a ton of mana open, be able to tap for 3, 4, 5 mana. And, Ancient Tomb is keeping Josh's life total at the same clip as Adrian, though this turn it will likely fall a bit more with the multiple man lands.
3 mana, Chalice at 1.
Oh, that Signal Pest came out just in time.
Yeah.
And Lodestone Golem on the other side.
1, 2, 3, 4. Nope, he's just attacking for 6.
Yeah, seems fine. Lodestone Golem doesn't make anything in Adrian's deck cost more.
Nope.
He's just a 5/3.
So what to tap? Maybe his creatures, so he can ramp out some.
Yeah, if he's not tapping
spells.
his creatures here, he's going to be in a tough spot. If he's keeping them open to chump block, that's just a disaster.
If he has a 0 drop, he'll be able to get more use out of his Tolarian Academy this turn. He can't play any 1 drops, but if he can pay a mana to pay 2 mana, play 2 0 drops, and then have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana available with the Academy, he could run out, a Lodestone Golem or something.
Yeah, he really wants to be able to one-up these man lands with something that can actually block them or put down so much damage that the crackback is going to be lethal. He can win this race with enough drops, but we'll see. He did tap the creatures as we expected. Let's see what he does with the mana base here. No, we're just going right into a Lodestone Golem, I'm guessing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At 4 mana, that seems like the most likely play. Can't see anything else he'd be doing.
There he is.
Lodestone. Well, there we go. Right over the top. Able to profitably block the 2-power creatures here.
So let's see what Josh can do to answer that.
Signal Pest does a lot of things for this deck. It adds up extra damage, but you got to remember, with Arcbound Ravager, you can get counters onto him, and he can become a very difficult to block beater. Even versus something like Blightsteel Colossus, you can just make sure that you have enough damage, just sitting back to soak up the infect, enough toughness, I should say, and then swing over him with a 6, 7, 8 power Signal Pest. Very, very powerful card in the deck. It has a lot of rolls. It's just a lot of card for 1 mana. I really like the promo version too. Have you seen that? The art on it's pretty neat.
I missed it.
Adrian keeps it classy with the set foils for the most part, but
gotta respect that.
I do like the promos when they have different art on occasion.
He's taking away the mana, probably because he can't play a Skull Clamp anyway, so might as well do a bit of mana denial.
And the Memnite can trade with the Revoker later on.
True.
1 toughness is substantially less than 2 in this situation.
I would be tapping Signal Pest here. And so would Adrian. Did I miss a Wasteland? It looks like
yeah, you must have.
Yeah,
the Academy.
The Academy's in the graveyard. So that's really going to hurt Adrian, because now he can't play anything else. Is he attacking right now? Wild
Very
man.
aggressive. Very, very aggressive. It's interesting he didn't attack with the Lodestone instead, because he could have kept the Memnite back, traded with the Revoker, and he's got the Strip Mine for the Mutavault if he wants to go that route. The 1 damage does not seem like very much.
No. Well, we're going to see a Lodestone Golem.
So Adrian does have answers to all of those cards on his side. He can trade Lodestones, Memnite can trade with the Revoker, and he can waste the Mutavault if he needs to.
Oh, so now he's going to, let's see, we'll probably see a Strip Mine and a block.
I think he probably just blocks the Mutavault here. I think you take the 2. I don't see a reason to get rid of the Strip. Really, your Strip Mine will be able to handle the next Manland. Your Memnite's going to be able to trade with that Revoker, and your Lodestone Golems will kill each other. So that's very interesting. Very aggressive from Josh. With no hand here as well, correct? So
yeah, he's hellbent on winning.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very, very aggressive. And granted, Adrian would be left with 1 mana. Maybe that's the thought process here. We'll see if this block is final. I mean, it's a decision for sure, but I would think he's going to end up blocking the Mutavault here. Memnite being able to trade with Revoker seems just fine. And that guy does not get to kill a lot of things in combat. I mean, you gotta give him his chance when it arrives.
Right.
No, he goes this route.
Yeah.
All right. So Lodestone Golems will bounce off of each other. Adrian's down a mana source, but up 2 life from where he would have been with the line I was advocating.
Yeah, he just passes the turn. See you later, Tanglewire.
Yeah, so those Lodestone Golems will be able to bounce off of each other if Josh decides to attack. Now, if that Lodestone Golem gets out of the way, then Adrian still has 2 damage a turn coming across. That might be a consideration. 7 turns is a long time in Vintage, though.
Oh, yeah.
Josh has a very healthy mana base.
Oh,
there's your other Lodestone Golem.
And he is going to attack.
Yeah, he's got a trade here.
He can't take that 5. And it's not worth just chumping when you could, deal with it.
Let's see what he's got.
If it's not mana, he's in trouble.
It costs 1. We've got some serious 1 casting cost stuff over there.
He doesn't have anything he can do in his hand.
Yeah, 1 mana with a sphere resistance is just not a good spot.
So he's going to have to block with either his Signal Pest or his Memnite, and then if he doesn't draw like a workshop or something, even if he does draw a workshop, like what can he even play this turn? Like a Ravager maybe?
Josh
In a
is
very precarious situation, and
thinking
Josh
thinking about the card. Oh, it's a
Ratchet
Ratchet
Bomb.
Bomb.
Yeah, just blow it up for 0. That yeah,
Yeah.
the Pearl's also gone.
And the Chalice at 1, though.
And the Chalice at 1.
And his Mock Jet.
Oh, well, I guess it doesn't matter.
Now Workshop's a good draw.
Yeah.
He's got a bunch of 1-drops in his hand.
Neither of them realizing that the Chalice at 1 is gone, so this could really hurt Adrian's turn. If he doesn't... Oh, I wish I knew what that card was.
Yeah, if that was a Mana Source, because he had... Well, he's got Signal Pest on board. That's...
Yeah, why
that could be a very costly mistake. Yeah, that's...
Shouldn't have scooped there.
Yeah, so in this match we've seen two plays that I definitely would like to talk to these guys about to see what the thought process was. One was that Genesis Chamber with the Revoker, which is a very easy mistake to make. But then the Chalice having the converted mana cost of 0 when it's in the battlefield. Now when it's on the stack, it's whatever the total mana cost is.
Which is relevant with Mana Drain.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or other Chalice of the Voids.
Exactly. Well, yeah.
I've seen plenty of people go turn 1, Chalice at 2, and then try and play a Chalice at 1 on the same turn. Why? Just do it the other order next time. My goodness. Those are the type of mistakes that you make once. Hopefully your opponent makes you make the mistake, and you can have the feel bads, and you will literally never do that again.
True.
Yeah, I had that happen in a Legacy matchup playing against somebody, and they played a Marrow Regery, and then they tapped my Batterskull.
Oh, yeah, the Germ token's still in tap.
Yes. I asked him, like, do you want to learn, or do you want to win? And he's like, what? And I'm like, you'll become a better player if what I say isn't going to change the game state. And he's like, all right, tell me. And I'm like, you tapped the equipment. You say Batterskull, like, you need to tap the Germ. And I actually saw him a couple of months later, and he's like, I literally will never make that mistake again.
Yeah.
Like, he's played against the Stoneforge deck several times since then, and he thinks about it every time. But that is how we learn.
So Adrian's going to be on the play this game, which is huge for his deck because of his ability to dump his hand.
It's huge in the Workshop mirror as well. I mean, anytime you're up against the other Workshop decks, you're going to be able to be completely uninterrupted on your first turn, because Workshops don't have any kind of Mind Break Trap, Force of Will type of effects.
Right.
And they can't afford to run them. I mean, they're totally dead after they take a turn, because you've got your own spheres and stuff.
I think, from what I saw, Adrian's hand was a bit mana light, and he can probably play a few things, but he's really, really in the tank right now because he wants to make sure that he's going to be able to win the long game. Because both of these have been long games, and he's shipping it.
Yeah,
both shipping.
That's got to be the right play there. As far as a mana light hand versus shops, unless you're able to put out a card drawing engine or something that's going to let you draw into more mana and really stabilize. I mean, you don't want to have a hand where you're putting out like a Memnite and a couple of Memnites and a Signal Pest versus shops. I mean, they're going to have blockers. He has tons of man lands. They're going to be able to trade there. So we'll see what comes out of this mull. Hopefully some exciting hands. Now, I didn't see Tabernacle on Josh's side of the table last game. I'll be interested to see if he brought it in. It is potentially very good versus Adrian's list. Usually just in there for decks like Dredge that are going to generate a ton of tokens, or the Pyromancer builds, or like an Empty the Warrens deck. But Adrian's deck is on par with all of those in terms of the ability to put a massive amount of creatures on the board very early. Like that.
There we go.
Double Memnite, Soul Ring, Lodestone.
What?
7 damage first turn. Now that would be game over versus a lot of decks. But Josh's deck can largely ignore the Lodestone Golem, which is huge. If you were playing a deck with like Deathrite Shamans, that would be punishing as hell.
Now, Josh has the Wasteland, but he can't really afford to spend a turn wasting, because then he's going to just eat 7 damage and get... So yeah, so he just tank wires, which is totally reasonable.
Yeah, so Adrian does have a choice here. He can get in for 5, or he can continue to develop his board. Usually it's best to get the early damage, but it depends on what else is in his hand.
Hmm.
You know, if he
Oh
had,
yeah, he only had one card left.
well, he's got a Gaia's Cradle,
Yeah.
so that's at least 3 mana. That's actually better than a Mishra's Workshop here. Yeah, Gaia's Cradle is just so strong in this deck.
So get in there for.
Yeah, coming across for 5,
Cradle.
and a Revoker.
Revoker.
All right.
Revoker will name.
Ratchet Bomb.
Ratchet Bomb.
Ratchet Bomb, totally reasonable. You know, that would get rid of permanence on Adrian's side of the table, decrease the clock by 2, and he doesn't have a lot of other options when you're looking at Josh's deck. He's got Mutavault and Mishra's Factory, which are lands. If it was a Pithing Needle, that would be the way to go, but Revoker really can't do anything about those.
So
Same with Wasteland and Strip Mine.
Mhm.
So then, yeah, we're looking at Ratchet Bomb, and that's pretty much it, aside from the acceleration. I mean, he's got Lotus, Sapphire, Jet, all of the Moxes, Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, and that may be the way that he'd go later on. If Josh drops a Mox Sapphire and Adrian gets another Revoker, sure, you Stone Rain that thing. Actually, at 2 mana, I guess it's more of a sinkhole.
So Josh taking some damage, developing his board, a Revoker of his own.
And he'll go with the Soul Ring there.
That's reasonable, but kind of unnecessary at this point.
Yeah, I think Adrian having 7 mana kind of negates the effectiveness of getting rid of that Soul Ring. I mean, he has 7 after the Soul Ring goes away. I mean, 9 with it.
Right.
It's not like he's looking to hardcast Blightsteel or something.
Adrian coming across with everybody, trading. Oh, and he just blocked. He doesn't. I thought I saw a Ratchet Bomb in his hand too, but he blocks the Lodestone instead. Just takes the 4.
Whew.
Interesting.
That
seems like a
be
pretty
right.
bad block.
That can't be right. Is there anything else in his list that could justify that? A duplicate, maybe? Is he going to drop a Workshop and a duplicate? Because that could make sense, wanting to keep the 5/3 around, I guess. No, that doesn't make sense. I'm trying to justify it. I'm coming up totally blank.
He can't even animate that Mutavault with his Workshop.
And he's facing down 9 damage here. He does need to do something. He's got a Lodestone of his own.
Okay. I mean,
that Revokers, they just straight up should have traded there.
Yeah.
He'd be in a completely different spot. He'd be able to trade Lodestones here. If he wanted, he'd even have the luxury of blocking a Memnite. But if, like you said, if he has Ratchet Bomb in his hand, then he would have completely stabilized.
I think he did. Hopefully we'll get a chance. So he's going to trade Lodestones here, most likely. Or maybe he will actually. No, he has to trade Lodestones at this point, because if he plays the Ratchet Bomb now, he can't get rid of the Lodestone. He's still going to take lethal next turn. Even though he's getting rid of. Okay, Mana Vault, go.
Wow. So he has to. Yeah, Ancient
Tabernacle,
offline.
totally dead. Look at all that mana.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about. With if Adrian has a Gaia's Cradle, he's easily able to pay for the Tabernacle. So it's tough. I mean, there are going to be games where it's really, really good versus Adrian's deck, and there's going to be others where it's not even a speed bump.
Yeah, that's definitely a Ratchet Bomb.
Yeah, I do not agree with how this has been played.
So he's got a Revoker, which he can play and name, I don't know, something that is not going to matter.
I mean, the 2 cards in Adrian's deck that are the strongest are Ravager and Skullclamp. So we've got 1 floating.
He plays the Ratchet Bomb. Oh well, the thing's gone now. The Revoker's gone. Revoker naming.
He's gonna go with Soul Ring again.
Soul Ring again, yeah.
It's something that he can definitely hinder.
Blow up for 0.
And now they can stare at each other here.
Yeah, the difference is Adrian's going to be able to play whatever he draws. And Adrian's at 20 life, so he can actually take a couple of hits.
Yeah, I am not agreeing with any of this here. The swinging with the Lodestone Golem there means that Josh is going to have to block.
Yeah.
He's throwing away card advantage at 2 life.
So what did Adrian draw? Oh, a jet. Yeah. Play the jet. Why not?
Yeah, he's going to be able to swing with the manland. What does he have for a manland here? He's got a Mutavault. So he'll be able to swing for 2, and the Lodestones can stare at each other. He does have another Ratchet Bomb. He can ratchet that up to 1, get rid of Soul Ring and the Mana Vaults, but 6 mana from the workshops is really going to be tough. He's got Wasteland for one of them, but I mean, there's a lot of contortions to try and cut off Adrian's mana base, and at the end of the day, his creatures really don't cost that much. Memnite, Signal Pest, the Genesis Chamber, Arcbound Ravager, Revoker. You're talking about 1 and 2 mana plays, some of them 0 mana.
Mm-hmm. Mana
Denial just does not seem like the way to go. Now, if it was Sphere Resistance type effects, that's completely different, because now you're talking about someone paying 3 mana, for a 1/1 or a 2/1. I mean, that's totally different. But here's the Tabernacle.
Okay. So, yeah, pay it with a Mox.
So much mana.
Now, I don't think he just swings into that Lodestone Golem. Unless he, draws something, but...
No, I don't think there's any reason to swing there.
Yeah, no, he didn't draw anything worth playing. Which is interesting. Maybe it was a 1-drop. And that's probably... Well, Josh did not choose to put any counters on Ratchet Bomb. So that was an interesting choice.
Yeah, I think he hasn't really committed to what direction he wants to go in with the Ratchet Bomb. If he wants to keep it around to mop up tokens and zero casting cost guys, or what he wants to do. I would think you'd want to get rid of Soul Ring and Mana Vault if you're using the same logic he has been all game long, like throwing Revoker after Revoker out of Soul Ring, and you finally have a chance to get rid of it. You'd think you'd do it. Yeah, I mean, it is possible he could potentially make that Tabernacle really good if he could get rid of the Soul Ring and the Mana Vault, and then Wasteland the Gaia's Cradle. Then all he needs to do is get rid of that jet, and Adrian can't afford to pay any upkeeps.
Interesting. So, Adrian using 2 mana. Genesis Chamber?
I would like to see an Arcbound Ravager here.
Yeah.
That seems like the play, because that's going to be able to really interact with anything Josh tries to do with Ratchet Bomb. It could allow his Lodestone Golem to trump Josh's Lodestone Golem.
Absolutely.
Let's see what he's got.
Being extremely careful.
Yeah, this game is going to come down to the decisions of the players. This is not an autopilot matchup. A lot of people think Shops is. This one is definitely going to be somebody making a mistake. There's the Genesis Chamber. If he has a Ravager to follow it up, it would be tremendous.
So he tapped that first workshop to do what?
Ooh, Metamorph. So probably copying Lodestone Golem, and you go ahead and target Josh's just in case there's some removal.
Now he's really going to be able to pull ahead. I mean, Josh has to block. I wonder if he...
It is a replacement effect anyways with the Metamorph. It does not enter the battlefield as a... It's not a trigger. So even if there was removal, Adrian was safe. I think that was...
overly cautious.
Yeah, it's probably just the right play.
Yeah.
It just feels like the right play. So what do we have here from Josh? He's in a tough spot. Are getting close to time as well on the match. And is that's a concession? That's the concession.
Oh, all right.
could not deal with the 2 lodestone golems swinging into him there.
Well, yeah, I mean, he couldn't animate both of his factories because he only had an ancient tomb, and he was at 2 life. I mean, not factories, mutavaults. Yeah, no, very, very interesting, grindy game.
Yeah, we weren't able
Really
to
cool.
see Adrian's List do anything insanely broken, which was too bad. I've seen it on several occasions just go absolutely ballistic. Usually right before a concession is how that
Yeah.
goes. It just gets to the point where there's just no cards in Magic that are going to get you out of that. So yeah, that was excellent to see 2 of the best shopped variants currently on the scene, and Adrian's List was favored, and it was able to pick up the win.
All right. Well, that was a really cool round 1. Great start, and I'm looking forward to seeing round 2.